When you're taking photos with the iPhone, your goal should be to show the world to people like they've never seen it before. And a great way to do that is using long exposure photography. Long exposure photography works really great when you have movement in the scene that you want to blur out for a creative effect. This is particularly useful when you're taking photos of moving water. For example, if you have a fast-moving river, a waterfall, or waves in the ocean, that tends to work really good for long exposure photos. But what is a long exposure? Well, it's actually a stationary photo that you've captured over a longer period of time. So typically, a photo is captured within a fraction of a second, so that's a short time. But a long exposure photo would be captured over several seconds, which is a much longer time. And if you're taking a photo of a waterfall, which is what we're about to do, then the water that's falling down the waterfall will be blurred out in a really beautiful, really smooth and silky way. So that's the kind of photo we're trying to capture now. Typically, if you want to do long exposure photography, you actually need a lot of equipment. So if you're using a DSLR camera, you would definitely need to use a tripod. You would need to use a special filter that actually makes the image darker, and you'd also need to use manual settings. So it's quite difficult and time-consuming to take long exposure photos with a DSLR. But on the iPhone, it's actually really quick and really simple. All you have to do is take a live photo, and that live photo can be transformed into a beautiful long exposure. Let me show you how that works. So I've just opened my camera app, and you can see that this already looks really good. But before I go ahead and take a photo, I actually want to spend a moment to talk about framing, because how you frame your photos is actually just as important, if not more important, than the techniques you use. So framing is absolutely critical if you want to get the best image possible. Now, the first thing that I see here is that we have this river which extends into the distance. And to me, that river is the most important part of the scene. So I think if I rotate my iPhone to vertical orientation like this, I'm actually going to get a better result. So you can now see how that river becomes the star of the photo. You can see it extending into the background, you can see the waterfall in the middle, and you can also see those beautiful green ferns at the bottom of the screen. So this is a great composition. But before I take a shot, I'd also like to see what happens if I change the height from which I'm shooting. So let me show you first what happens if I get down. So as I get lower and lower, you'll see that the river kind of becomes shorter in my frame. So now it takes up less space in the image. But what happens if I go higher instead? As I'm getting higher and higher, you'll see that the river starts getting longer and longer. It starts taking up more space in the frame. And actually, I like that even better. But there's a bit of a problem, because if I want to take a really great long exposure photo, it's important that I hold my iPhone as steady as I can, because that live photo, that 3-second video that I'm about to capture, is going to be converted into a long exposure photo. But if my hands are shaking a lot, the image isn't going to be sharp, so I can't move the iPhone too much. So what can I do? Well, actually today I'm kind of lucky, because literally right next to my feet there's an old log. If I carefully step on this old log, I can get a higher vantage point without having to extend my arms too high. So this is going to give me a steady grip and a steady shot that will result in a sharper long exposure image. And finally, before I take the shot, I also need to make sure that live photos are actually on. To me, they are on by default, which you can see at the top right hand corner of the frame, where the live photos icon is white. Now, technically speaking, white icon means that it's on auto, but from my experience, this is always going to give me a live photo, so I'm not worried about it. And before I take a shot, just another thing to consider in terms of framing is the fact that when you are going to convert a live photo into a long exposure, the resulting image will be cropped in just a little bit. So it will be a tiny bit smaller, and because of that, I need to leave just a little bit of extra room here on the right hand side as well as at the bottom of the frame, because I want to make sure that when I convert that live photo into a long exposure, I want to maintain that sort of circle that circles around the waterfall. To me, that's a really good, really strong natural frame. I want to make sure that this natural frame is preserved. So now that I've left enough space on the right, at the bottom, and also on the left side of the waterfall, I have to keep my iPhone as steady as I can for a couple of seconds. Then I can press the shutter, and then I have to keep holding my iPhone steady for a couple more seconds. And that's because I need the steadiest live photo possible. So let's do this again just to be sure. I'm holding my iPhone steady, pressing the shutter, and holding it steady for a couple more seconds. All right, let's see what we have. So I'm gonna open the Photos app now. And if I want to convert this regular photo into a long exposure, actually it's really easy. I'm gonna simply swipe up on the screen like this, and you'll see this effects menu open up. If I go a bit to the right, I have long exposure, and once I tap there, you'll see how the image is quickly transformed right in front of your eyes. And look at that. That looks just amazing. I have this really beautiful motion blur in the water, so it looks really, really great. And I've also managed to maintain that circle which surrounds the waterfall. So I have the exact composition I was looking for, even after the photo was cropped in just a tiny bit as I converted my live photo into a long exposure image. But now, let me show you one more example. We've come to another spot that's nearby, and here we have this huge wheel that's made out of wood, and it's actually a part of the old historic mill. And believe it or not, that thing is actually generating electricity now. I think you can even hear some noise in the background. But the reason I came here is because this wheel is spinning, and that spinning is very regular. So it's spinning at the same speed, in the same place. And to me, that also gives a potential long exposure photo opportunity. So with long exposures, it's not just water. They tend to work great with water, but if you have anything else that's moving, those can also be great opportunities for a long exposure. Now, you'll notice that this time I'm actually using a tripod, and while tripods aren't necessarily required for long exposure photography, remember that a long exposure will take that video that's recorded as a part of live photo, and it will essentially compress that video into a stationary photo. So if the video is moving, you might get some blur, and if you want a higher quality image, you will get a better result if you're shooting on a tripod. But now, let's talk about framing. So you'll notice that I've opened the camera app and I'm at my default 1x view. And this isn't a bad shot, but to me, the wheel is the most important part of the image, and I want to make this all about the wheel. So I'm gonna start by switching to my 2x, my telephoto, and now you can see that I'm so much closer to the wheel. Now, I like being closer, but there's something I don't like, and it's the fact that the entire left side of the frame is pretty much empty. Now, one thing I could do is just center the image. So if I adjust the tripod a little bit, you'll see that now I have space both on the left and on the right. And while this looks better, I still think it's not quite right. Now you'll notice that this wheel, from this angle, it is taller than it is wide. So I think this could potentially be a great opportunity to take a vertical shot. So let me rearrange my tripod again. And this time we'll have this vertical composition. And that to me is the framing I'm looking for. You notice that now this is all about the wheel, and the wheel is framed exactly in the center. And for a big, prominent, circular subject like this, I couldn't think of a better composition than framing it centrally in a vertical shot. So I'm really happy about that. Now I'm almost ready to take a photo, but there's one more thing I want to do. You see, when I'm going to be pressing the shutter with my finger like this, the iPhone might move just a little bit because I'm touching the screen. And if I want to get the absolute sharpest image possible, I want to avoid that movement. So how can I do it? Well, I have a couple of options. One thing I could do would be using the 3-second timer, and then I can press the shutter and the image will actually only be captured in 3 seconds. Or another option is to use these headphones. So these came in the box when I bought the iPhone, but you can use any wired headphones that have the volume adjustment on the cable. So if you have the volume adjustment, those headphones will work. So what I'm going to do is plug in these headphones, and now if I want to take a photo, all I have to do is simply press the volume up the plus button on the headphones. So when I press the plus button, a photo is immediately taken and I don't even have to touch the screen of my iPhone. So I get the steadiest photo possible, which will result in the sharpest possible image. So now I'm going to tap on the little photo at the bottom left-hand corner, and that launches the Photos app. And from here, I'm going to once again swipe up and select long exposure. And look at that. That looks absolutely amazing. It's not just the water that's blurred out, but also the wheel itself is blurred out. And it creates this really unique, really special photo that I couldn't possibly capture without doing a long exposure.